Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss the S&P 500. Today is Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Allow me to read our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Today is also very light on the news front. There's no data points scheduled. We just have a bunch of speakers, and Trump is on the calendar at 9 a.m. Eastern. Also, Bostic and Barkin speaking at that time. Collins speaking a half an hour later. We have the EU Consumer Confidence Flash, which is fairly minor for U.S. indices unless it comes out completely out of whack. Musalem at 1 o'clock, and that wraps up our speakers and our scheduled news for today. Let's move on to our charts. Okay, here we are on our chart of the S&P 500. This is daily bars full session. The narrative we've been following on this chart is after we made our low, we were looking to recover this area of structure, which is really a big part of the March range. We did that successfully within this area. We're really at the top is our 5821 MCV POC. And the narrative we're following here is how that MCV POC has essentially went bid, and we've started just trend higher. And the area that we're looking to recover, if we continue this trend higher, is this area over here, which is basically our balance around our all-time highs. The real key area is the 6,000 print, which we are kind of knocking on the door of. If we continue higher through that 6,000 print, I'll be looking for the value low of this profile right in this area. Looking at what we did yesterday, just briefly on this chart before we go into a smaller time frame, the real key that kind of we're seeing happen is the market is just auctioning in a very orderly way higher. Like we push higher, pull back, push higher, pull back, push higher, and then yesterday we got a pullback through yesterday's low, where we spent a lot of the overnight session trading below yesterday's low. And then the RTH opened and we just drove higher. So bulls are still in control and we still are maintaining this kind of grindy trend higher. Let's go to a smaller time frame chart and talk about this more specifically. Okay, I just want to quickly look at our market profile chart again. This is market profile RTH only. Yesterday I gave a lot of attention to this day. When we did plans, we had taken these singles, this pink area are singles left from Thursday, and we were trading around them overnight. And I'd kind of mentioned that this area was really key. If we stayed below it, this kind of center of mass area, that we could see us continue to extend lower. And instead, what we did on the RTH Open, as I noted, we just kind of ripped right through this area. It was just ripped right through it, and we're able to continue. So really, and then we left singles here yesterday. So these singles, showing that we've rejected the singles here, these singles are going to be fairly important for me today, as will be the high of Friday, which is the prior week's high. So that's what I'm looking at today. Let's go to the smallest time frame of chart, the intraday chart, and plan for specific price action. Okay, here we are on our intraday chart of the S&P 500, and we can see what has happened so far overnight. As I talked about yesterday, here we were trading in the singles area, opened and just rallied straight through all of those prices. I was really looking at the 50s. This area is a pretty significant LIS. I was looking for the market to trade lower if we stayed below it, and as you can see, we just went straight through it. So that wasn't what happened, and instead we got door number 2, and we're able to push higher and take the prior day's low. Pretty bullish day the way we opened down here below the prior RTH range and ripped to take the high. So that's pretty bullish right here. That's a pretty bullish day for me, and we left these singles. So again, guess what? The 50s are now really important to me again, but from the opposite side. We'll begin with bullish ideas. And starting with the most bullish idea, we see that we opened Our reopen was here. We pushed higher. We took the prior day's high already. Found sellers and began to revert. As you can see with this distribution, we're running into willing buyers right here. So the most bullish idea for me would be if this overnight low just kind of holds, which is a significant possibility. So seeing this overnight low hold, the obvious place we'd look to be tested is the prior week's high once again. So seeing support, seeing us hold the overnight low, and take the prior week's high. The pretty obvious trade with acceptance above the prior week's high would be the push to this zone. This is our 90 zone, which corresponds with yesterday's high. If we get a lower high versus yesterday's high here, like an attempt and a failure, we'll go over that on bearish ideas. But here we're looking at the idea where we get acceptance above prior week's high and we push and we're able to test this zone. If we're able to test this zone and still hold on pullbacks, still accept prices, then I would be up for continuation to the millennium figure, the next zone up, which is the big target I've been talking about, the 6,000 print. This is a very, very, very key area in my opinion. 6,000 is a big psychological figure. I think that if we are able to hit it and we get, there's participation, there is a possibility for a stop run through it to the next zone. That would, and if we hold above it, then it would just be runners up to the 6031s and potentially just runners if we continue to hold above 6,000. But this is basically the bullish idea if we hold this this overnight low. Could something like this happen if we take the overnight low? Sure. How would that look? Well, potentially the thing is we could have resistance coming in ahead of yesterday's high. So if we got some type of a flush lower through the overnight low, obviously the singles would be a key area. Now here's the thing, if we push below the singles, we'll go over the bearish ideas, but if we just test and then revert above the singles and then get back into yesterday's VPOC area, back into this overnight range and are able to get back above the prior week's high, then that bullish scenario is back on for me. So basically what I'm saying is we get like a quick test below the overnight low or singles, but it reverts above, then I would consider that just a test, especially if we get back to the prior week's high and that bullish idea would be on again. So let's go over bearish ideas. Bearish ideas would now be, for me, would be if we are unable to get the overnight high. This is the idea I talked about, where maybe we push through the prior week's high, look like we're going to attack yesterday's high, but just start to fail. Well, then we'd have to be aware that we're starting to see a rounded top here and potentially may just see some excursion lower and reversion back into the singles. As I just said, if we lose the overnight low, the key area would be these singles. And if we push into them and test and just start to rip higher, then that's back to the bullish idea. But if alternatively we push through them and we either push through them, hold, try, and just continue. Either that or we actually push through them, try to revert, actually get an impulse. It looks like it wants to go long, but we fail at the prior week's high. Either one of these ideas, without getting back above the prior week's high, would actually start to have me looking at this area as balance. I would expect the singles to be retested and for us to potentially start to fall lower and explore this unauctioned area from yesterday. So continuing below the singles, I would just be going zone to zone, scaling each one of these zones. And my big key target for excursion lower would be the closing of these singles. That would be, so that bearish idea, like I said, we'd have to lose the overnight low. We'd have to then lose these singles and show that price really wants to continue down here. At that point, I would be looking for a zone-to-zone trade with these singles as my ultimate short target. I would expect support on the initial test of these singles. If we happen to drop these singles somehow today and get below century and start to continue to make progress, that would change the environment for me and I would just go zone to zone. I'm not expecting that, but I'm just noting that if that happens, that's what I'd be looking for. So overall, just tying a bow on it today, I'm bullish coming into the day. I'm bullish if we hold the overnight low, and I'll be bullish if we take the overnight low and quickly reject, but I will no longer be bullish if we take the overnight low and we either show continuation below the singles, or we try to revert and cannot get back out of the prior week's range. Both of those would have me looking at balance or potentially lower prices. What is a nothing scenario today? Well, in my opinion, a nothing scenario would be one of those bearish scenarios I talked about, most likely where we can't really get through yesterday's VPOC or hold above it, and we end up reverting lower, really below these singles, but above these singles is kind of our nothing day, in my opinion. But anyway, that's what I got. 11 minutes, a little bit tired today. We'll wrap it up here. Hopefully that's relatively complete. Any questions, please ask me in the chat room. I hope that you're having a wonderful day today, and I hope that you remember to hit the like button. We're getting really close to that 10,000 mark. I think that everyone should press like or subscribe and try to get us to 10,000, because it would be such a big deal to be the guy that gets to, press the button at 9,999 and get it to be 10,000. That would be like a big distinction, maybe make you feel better on that day. Maybe not, but it's worth a try. Let's try it. So anyway, that's what I got. Any questions, ask me in the chat room. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. I hope your wonderful morning continues. And most importantly, I hope you find some way to improve your trading today that is not dependent upon your P&L. That's what I got. Any questions, ask in the room. Ciao.